Hello, Elaine, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Avish. It's always a pleasure to see you and be with you.
It is great. It's always great talking to you. In fact, we've already spent like 15 minutes just talking because once we get started,
That's what we do.
I'm like, I should record this just so it's on there. So, well, thank you for being on here, Elaine. I wanted to have you on here because you're doing some really interesting stuff and you've got an interesting background, which we're going to get into. But before we get into that, just for people who aren't familiar with you and your work, could you just share with us like your kind of 1 minute bio or pitch or whatever it is, kind of about what you're up to these days, work wise?
Sure. Well, I have been a professional speaker for 30 years, and I have worked with a number of different clients. I've worked with over 700 universities nationwide, creating a niche for working with collegiate athletes and also new students, helping them make positive choices to succeed in life and not get waylaid because they're partying out of control. I've also worked with the military, doing work with sexual assault awareness and programming, and more recently doing a lot of work with associations and businesses doing programming on wellness and incorporating that into their lives as well as into the workplace. And also I have done some work with inclusion and effective communication and trying to help people create a healthy and mentally well workplace culture where everybody collaborates well together. So that's in a nutshell. I guess I'm trying to think if there's any other sectors that I've left out, but I've had quite a varied
it's
career.
it's great, but what I love about it is so your topics, some of the things you're talking about are things that could be considered sensitive or dry or heavy, sexual assault and alcoholism and substance abuse and but you found a way for you've been doing this for what, 30 years? Is that
30 years,
30
yes.
years? You've sort of always found a way to make your programs very interactive and engaging and fun and funny, right? So how did you manage to take these topics that are so maybe people don't even want to talk about them or they're sensitive? How did I realize I'm going way off the script? I think I told you we are going to talk about, but I'm curious, like, how did you figure out ways of bringing humor and lightness to these heavy topics?
I think growing up in New Jersey gave me moxie to speak comfortably about these topics. I grew up right outside of New York City, and a lot of people have commented that over the years and saying, you take something that's so difficult to talk about and make it easy to talk about. And I guess it's just ingrained in me. I have, I feel like, I've been through heavy times in my life, but I've also learned that you can add humor. You can always find a silver lining. You can always find humor in everything that you do, and people want to laugh. So no matter
Mm-hmm.
how heavy it is, but you have to know when to carefully insert that humor, so you're still being respectful to the subject matter and not making it seem like it's lighter than it is. So it's a delicate balance between the two. But
And when you can walk that balance, that's when clients love you and have you back because they're like, oh, she's able to make this fun but not make light of it. And
yes, yes. And they also, a lot of my clients like the fact that I've been flexible in my subject matter too, because I've watched how needs have changed. I mean, people 30 years ago and their issues and what they're encountering is way different than it is now. And so you need to keep
yes.
changing your topics, your subject matter, so you can remain relevant to them.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that because you have changed. I know you spoke a lot in the past to education, to universities, and then you did a lot of work with sports teams. And now you're still doing that, I know, but currently you're
And
doing.
and I'll interrupt you. I'm sorry. That's the one sector that I left out when I'm talking. It's like, where did I leave that out? I've worked for 32 teams across the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball. Okay, so
I know you like
jog my
you
memory
buried the
there.
lead, right? That's the most
I know.
impressive thing. In fact, in prepping for this, I said, "Do you want to send me some stuff to watch?" You're like, "Oh, here's a good interview. It's just you talking to David Tyree about the helmet
That's
catch, and
funny.
and you got
I
all these
love
pictures on your
it.
social media and website about you with this sports team and that sports team."
How could I
Um,
leave that out?
it's pretty cool. But so you've done a lot of that, and you're still doing that work, but you started doing more lately with companies and corporations and associations. So I want to start there. And one of kind of your lead programs for that is titled "Happy, Healthy, and Present: Crushing It at Work." So tell us a little about what that program is all about.
That program is raising awareness that this machine, the human body, which I have a great background on because I used to be a dental hygienist. So I had to study anatomy, histology, microbiology, all this, and it gave me appreciation to the delicate balance that all the systems work on. And trying to get people to understand that if we care for this, it's like a car, it's going to be good to us and it's going to perform well. And when we perform well, we are going to be way more productive. In fact, companies nationwide, nationally, they lose $226 billion every year due to absenteeism. And so when they incorporate wellness into the workforce and make this part of their culture, 90% see an increase in productivity. And then those people bring those habits home. So people are healthier in the home and they're calling out sick less. It just all cycles upon each other. So I get people to reflect on their medical histories, the family history, their own history, who they want to be there for, and what are their goals. 1 year out, 5 years out, 10 years out. And so they get to understand the importance. And then I share all the different ways that we can incorporate health and wellness into our own lives, even getting up and exercising at your desk. And I show them all the different strategies because I run around like a maniac all day. I don't go to the gym, but I have my weights over in the corner. I'm lifting weights. I'm bouncing on my medicine
Well,
ball.
one thing I think anyone who's met you can account for is your energy. You're like a dynamo. You just kind of keep going, and you just had
Definitely.
a milestone birthday, which is incredibly right.
Another decade.
Yeah, you
Yay.
just turned 70.
Yes.
But really, anyone just watching you run across the stage and all the things you do and your energy, and you just mentioned this, or maybe you mentioned one of the interviews I watched, where like you went to like a retreat with a bunch of kind of similar women professionals, and you were like 20 years older than most of them there, and they were all commenting on your energy.
Yes, yes, yep, they definitely were. And so that energy, it's I mean for my birthday I hosted a dance party and danced all night. I didn't sit still. I never sat down at a table where everybody else is like we're sold. And but and then with the I also help people learn to how to set up different programs within the workplace, how to bring that in as being part of their culture. And the interesting thing is, I spoke for an association in Pennsylvania back in June, and I was told by the head of the association that it's a lot of older people. They're not going to like this, but I'm going to do this anyway. And I got there. I loved all these people. I was like yucking it up with them. We had a great time. I entered the cornhole contest the night before because I'm not the kind of speaker that comes in the day of and
Mhm.
leaves. I stay for a day or so and really get to know people. But a couple months later, I got an email from one of the attendants, and this was an older gentleman. And he said, "You really motivated me and my wife to change our lifestyle habit. And since then, I have lost 32 pounds. My blood pressure has decreased, and I'm not having any issues with my skin that I had before. And you have motivated us to develop our own blue zone here in Pennsylvania, because the blue zones are the areas of the world where
Sure,
people
yeah,
longer
you're very
than
long lived.
most others. And so, that's what fills your heart when you hear, or I hear back from people after they've seen the program and they go, I now have little weights in my office, or I'm getting up and I'm doing my squats, or I'm doing this and that. So
Well,
motivating
let's
people to understand.
let's dig into this a little bit, right? Because this is great, and anyone listening who's in HR or an executive, you're like, oh, I want some of that wellness program for mine. You should definitely reach out to Elaine. But let's get a little bit tactics, if you don't mind, around this, and starting with more of a meta tactic, because one of my main topics is change, and basically it's like saying yes and a lot of people will say yes but, especially to wellness. And when you're talking about some of these topics like wellness or some of the other things you've talked about in the past, like sexual assault or alcoholism, like these are all things that our brain logically knows we should do this or not do this, right? And yet in the moment, so many people make the bad choices, right? So what have you found strategically helps people? Like it's essentially helping people do the things they know they should be doing, but they don't. Because I would think that's kind of a big part of a wellness program. It's like it's very rarely a lack of information, right? Like people know it's not that people don't know I shouldn't eat the donut and I should eat oatmeal. It's that the donut's so much tastier. So how do you kind of address that?
I think you have to bring the information forward in a way that's easy for them to receive it and not make it look like, I'm telling you to do this, I'm telling you to do that. But if you share, storytelling is amazing. So if you share the positive outcomes that people see, then that can make a difference. I think the thing that really helped him when I developed this program, it was not part of it, but I even mentioned it earlier, where I had people take a few minutes to reflect on their medical histories and who they want to be here for. And a gentleman came up to me after that same conference that I did in June, and he said, "You made me think." And I said, "What did I make you think about?" And he said, "Everything." And then another gentleman said, "You shifted my perspective because my goals coming into that room were way different than they were going out of that room." So I think when you can introduce a moment of self-reflection to people, then it makes them more open to the information that you're imparting on them.
And that's, I think, so powerful because, I don't talk about wellness, right? Obviously, I'm one of the people who needs a wellness program.
Come on, Avish, let me straighten you out.
Well, I have been working on it this year, but it's a great little approach to change. It's the same kind of thing I talk about with change. Is that we think when we want to get people to change, we need to give them arguments and information. Here's what you should do. Here's why you should do it. And yet, I think the one statement you said that the person said to you is, "It's like you made me think." So if you could just make someone think, not by telling them what to do, because that immediately creates that pushback, right? That yeah, but like if you just get them to think, and I think the two ways of doing that, like you said, storytelling. You tell someone a story, then their mind just starts automatically thinking, putting themselves in there. Or the other way, I think, is by asking them questions to get them to
Yes.
think,
I
not
gave
giving
them a
them the
cause
answers.
for thinking. You gave them a cause for thinking and reflection. And I think that reflection piece really changed my program dramatically and how the people received me and my information because I put it on them first.
Yes.
So it made them more open. And that I think just made a world of difference. So
Yeah, I love that. And so, how have you found that the corporate people are responding, not necessarily the employees you're doing the program for, but the decision makers? Do you feel like you're getting resistance, people saying we don't need a wellness program, or are they coming to you already knowing they need it?
well, it's interesting because I was just in New Jersey earlier in January doing a program for the North Jersey or the Jersey Shore Human Resource Group. And
Mm-hmm.
so these are all the employees coming in from different businesses within that area. And so many people came up to me even before the program and said, "We're really interested in seeing this because health and wellness is important." I think a lot of people are starting to recognize the importance of it. We're looking at the mental health issues that we're seeing, the physical and the mental go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep people enthusiastic, energized, happy about their work. And I often say to people, look, if you don't feel well, you're curled up under on the couch and under a blanket, and you're just not that motivated to work and to focus. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we feel good, we have that motivation, we have that drive, we have that desire. And the other thing that happens too is when you incorporate wellness into the workforce performs better for you because they know that you care for them outside of
Mm-hmm.
their lives within the workplace. And when you show that caring, they're going to want to perform for you. They'll be more loyal to you.
Yeah, it is a two-way street, and it's so funny you said like when you're feeling better. We had just talked beforehand about I started the first 2 weeks of this year. Like a lot of people do, high motivation, really focused, doing good things, and then this bug hit my house. Started my oldest son, and then my youngest daughter, and then I got sick. And literally once I got sick, and I wasn't laid out. I mean, one day I was, but really for the most part, I was just like low energy, a cough, and my discipline just ran away. My
Mm.
motivation was gone. And it's so true. Like if you're not feeling good, it's so much harder to be productive. I just triage. I'm like, here's the stuff I got to get done. I wasn't going above and beyond. I wasn't getting ahead. I'm just like, um, and so I want to go deeper into when you something you said about the mental piece. Before that, though, how about one more tactic for someone who's listening? Maybe they have a desk job. You already mentioned things like exercising at your desk, but how about what would you recommend to like someone who wants to start? Maybe their company doesn't have a wellness program yet, and they're going to reach out to you. But before that, what are a couple of things someone who like sits at a desk all day can just start to doing to start improving their wellness?
It's important to move. And wellness is holistic. So in this program, I'm not just talking about movement, but I also talk about diet,
Mhm.
getting rid of processed foods, getting rid of sugar. It takes discipline. But if you eliminate those things from your diet, you'll see it. We are what we eat. But in terms of movement, even just, around 3 in the afternoon, we're sitting there and you're reading something, and you start like nodding and you're bobbing your head. And then before you know it, you
Mhm.
come up and you got a little bit of drool in the corner of your mouth. You're like, oh shit, I hope nobody sees that. And, but if you get up at your desk, and I have my audiences get up. I'm known for my interaction. You know that, Avish. So
Yeah.
people are moving around constantly, but just even getting up and if you can, if your knees can handle it or whatever, doing 25 squats. And when we sit for longer periods of time, the blood flows from the brain down to our feet and we lose our focus. We don't retain information the same way. And so if you get up every 20 minutes, you're bringing that blood flow back up to the brain. So I do squats. I even do this stuff when I brush my teeth and blow dry my hair. I do leg lifts. I do, plies where you're squatting with your feet to the side. Um, I also do arm circles. You can also do planks where you put your
Mhm.
hands on the desk and you're doing your modified push-ups. So you're working your biceps and your triceps, or you can go to a doorway and do that as well. Or even sometimes I won't purposely will not fill my water container up full. So I'm making sure I'm getting up every hour and I'm going down the stairs. And then when I come back up the stairs, I take the stairs two at a time because you're engaging a different group of
Mhm.
muscles, or I will run up and down the stairs. Or if I'm going from one room to another, people think I'm nuts if they could see me, but I skip and it's fun. I feel like, I'm 10 years old again, but it engages a whole different group of muscles and it gets that energy. And then
I
I go for a walk. So if you can even squeeze in even just 10 minutes outside, because
mhm.
being outdoors gives us a mental reset and the physical reset. Go for a walk at lunch if you can.
So what I love is I think the common theme, it's like I think sometimes people think of wellness and they're like, well, all right, I got to get up an hour early to go to the gym. And it's just, you're saying incorporate little, I don't know if you've seen this. There's a study that's been going around recently on social media where someone said if you do 10 body weight squats every 45 minutes, it has like this huge benefit. So just like every 45 minutes, get up, do 10 body weight squats, and that's it. It's like just little bits over the course of the day, just gets that motion. Um, it has health benefits and mental health, just like getting that. And that's one of the things I talk about with improv. The improv coach is very much a step by step. It's like just take one little step and see what happens and make an adjustment. And I don't know if you see this with wellness or anything you work on, but so many people in my experience just don't get started until they can take the massive action. They want to get all their ducks in a row, clear their calendar, get the new clothes, sign up for the membership. Like when all that's done,
Go
then
off
I'll work
it. Yes. No, I know. You have to know your body and read your body and don't destroy your body in the process. So, I do push-ups and I don't do the push-ups where I'm up on my toes because I have an exaggerated lumbar curve. So it was never comfortable for me. So I do the modified where I'm on my knees.
Mm-hmm.
But I created these killer biceps and I did 5 the first day. And then I did maybe 10 2 days later. And I got up to 40. But then you have to read your body because then I got to the point where I started to feel some discomfort in my shoulder. And that's your body saying, cut it out. And so I backed down to doing 20 in the morning and maybe 20 in the afternoon. And so you just have to go easy on yourself. I think the problem that we see, Avish, is that a lot of people don't read their bodies and tune into what they're feeling and intellectually
Mm-hmm.
take that in and make the adjustments that they need to create this, optimal performance for themselves. I mean, I can still wear the same clothes that I was wearing in high school. I maintained my weight. My friends used to love to watch me eat when I was in high school and college. And I could pack away a whole pizza by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I would bring a lunch and they would like watch all the stuff that I was pulling out. And after a while, I learned I couldn't do that anymore. Your metabolic rate changes dramatically at 40. So we have to keep making adjustments along the
Yes.
way to maintain what we want to, at the level that we want to.
Yeah, and I think it's such a good lesson. Just take a little step, see what happens, make an adjustment, pay attention, don't get tunnel vision. Um, and so I want to kind of build off of that and go back to what you said about the mental health piece. And this is a broad topic, so I just want to focus on the one thing because in listening to you in previous interviews and learning before this podcast, you have a whole, I'm not sure if it's a section of your wellness program or a whole separate topic entirely, but you do this whole thing around social media addiction and dopamine. And I found that like my little bells went off because last year I suddenly realized the issues I've had my whole life with procrastination and motivation. I was like, oh, once I put it in the context of dopamine, it all made sense. So I did a deep dive for myself. So when I saw, oh my God, this is something Elaine is talking about, I'm like, oh, we got to talk about that. So for people who are unfamiliar with what we're talking about, what is it you talk about when it comes to social media addiction and dopamine?
Well, the dopamine is the feel-good chemical in our brain. And when we use alcohol, when we use drugs, when we use social media, and you get those likes coming in, it secretes the dopamine. And that hence we get that addictive pattern. We want more, and then we keep using and we keep using. Social media was not built to connect us. It was built to keep us clicking and staying addicted and staying on. And I truly believe that social media, I mean, believe me, I do a lot with social media. I have a love-hate relationship with it.
Mm-hmm.
It has kept me in touch with so many people that I love, so many people that I would not have been in touch with from years ago. But it's harmed a lot of people. And I look at it, especially our youth today and the mental health issues that we're seeing in the crisis, especially TikTok, because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
these kids are just scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. They don't know how to look anybody in the eye. They don't know how to have a conversation. And it's unhealthy. We're slowly disconnecting from one another and we're creating a loneliness epidemic. Where people just want to hole up and just be on their devices. It's not good. Or we show up with our devices and, you sit down at dinner with everybody and everybody's got their
Mm-hmm.
cell phone on the table. And it's almost like you're sending this subtle message that there's something more important that's going to come in. And I'm going to distract from my visit with you and take that instead. So we're just sending these messages that are not good. The blue zones, one of the traits that those people have is they are extremely social. It's
Mm-hmm.
so important to socialize. People lift us up. I love being around people.
Yeah, and it's funny that because you and I are sort of opposite ends of the spectrum. I'm pretty introverted. You are not. You're
My husband calls me pathologically social.
yeah, and but I think this is slightly different because even as an introvert, I like to be social, but I may want to do it with people I know, with friends, with colleagues. I'm not the person who's going to go to a networking happy hour and chat with like eight different people and walk out with two best friends. Like that to me is torture. But I do like to see my friends and connect and chat. And it is interesting how the social media it gives us the illusion of that, right? Because if I'm on Facebook and I see posts from people, I feel like I'm connecting to them, but I'm really not. So it's as an additional barrier because you're kind of fooling yourself, being like, oh yeah, no, I've been in touch with so and so. It's like, oh no, I haven't. I've just been liking their posts on Facebook.
Yeah, and you know what happens with social media, and you find this, is that you start mindlessly scrolling. And
Mm-hmm.
instead of being productive and living your life, you're sitting there just mindlessly scrolling through everybody else's fabulous moments. And I believe that social media has destroyed our GDP. You look at
Mm-hmm.
what people could be doing with their productivity, but they're on their phones looking. So it's a
Well,
tough.
I think the thing that I found for me, and I'm actually thinking about shifting my business or adding a separate piece to my business because this is like someone once, I think it was Rory Vaden, I think who you know, had said your ideal client is who you were in the past. Like what's a message you needed to hear, and I'm like, this is the message I need because what I find is with social media, the product when you go on just productivity and time, it's like, oh, I got a half hour, I'm not doing anything else, let me scroll. I'm not really cutting my productivity. But what I find is it's not the time in that moment, it's the dopamine hit. Because once I start scrolling, it gives me that dopamine spike. And then when that dopamine crashes, all I want is more quick hits. And all I want to do, so my motivation drops. When I found that on mornings when I don't have the discipline and I let myself surf just Facebook for 10 minutes or TikTok for 10 minutes, the rest of the day, it's not just like, oh, that 10 minutes I could have been doing something else. It's like literally hurts my motivation and drive for like hours afterwards.
I agree. I think you summed it up so well. And you have that drop. And again, that's their sole goal was to keep you addicted and to keep you scrolling and to keep you going on because they're making money out of all the ads. And like for instance, you look at Facebook now, the majority of posts that I am seeing are ads. And every
Uh,
once in a while, you've got a friend sprinkled in here and there. It didn't used to be that way. I mean, they're making billions off of us.
yeah, their whole point is to keep you on the app. And
Yes.
by doing the
Yeah.
quick, the refresh. Oh yeah, and TikTok's even better at it. Like I've been using TikTok and I use it for a while trying to build a platform, but now I mostly just realize I'm addicted to the platform. And the algorithm on TikTok is so good, and it just the quick hit of everything. It's just like, but yeah, when I realize when I can have the discipline, like I try not to check anything until lunchtime. Uh,
Right.
and the days I do that, I get more done. I'm more motivated. I feel better. But it is amazing. Again, the logical, right? It's so logical, of course, it's better. But it's so easy when you feel a little down or stressed. It's like, oh, let me just take a quick look, and then everything goes out the window.
See what my friends are doing, right?
Yeah,
Instead of doing your own thing.
I
But
love the fact you're incorporating that into programs.
well, I have a program on resilience that I've had for college students because resilience is down, and I want to start bringing that into the corporate world too because I know that a lot of organizations are concerned about that, the mental health issues and the resilience. I have had a lot of very difficult moments in my life. My dad died on a tennis court when he was 49 years old. And then my mom remarried, and my stepdad unknowingly contracted HIV and passed it on to her. And I lost both of them to AIDS related causes. And I turned that into my speaking career. And so I want to teach people that all of us are going to go through something heavy. And I just always say it's a same theme, different variation. But we can learn that we can come stronger, come out of it stronger on the other side. And that's what I strive to do in my resilience program. I mean, I don't want people to not feel their pain, but you can work through it and you can find there's always positives around you, always people surrounding you that help you get through those moments. And that helps to lift you up and lift you out of those dark moments.
And I think to tie it to the social media, and I was just talking with someone earlier today. I was helping with they want to talk to me because they wanted to be more motivated. And they're like, "Well, you've been working for yourself, so you've been self motivating." So we talked, um, and this idea of you said like you want people to experience their pain, and I think that I think so much of the dopamine, the social media, the quick gratification stuff is really about avoiding uncomfortable feelings. It's like, and it could be something major like grief, but it could be something small, just like a little bit of stress or even a little overwhelm. Like, oh, I gotta send like I gotta respond to these 200 emails. Let me just quickly check Facebook. It's a way of like
Avoiding.
avoiding pain,
Yeah.
and it's so easy to do. And it makes you feel good for a second, and then it goes the downward spiral.
Well, it's interesting. I've done work with grieving years ago, did some training in it and some work with it. And they say that people grieve the way that they live. So if you're a procrastinator, you'll put it off. And I've seen people do that where they have a very personal, close loss in their life. And they just keep themselves busy, busy, busy to avoid those feelings from flooding in. And after my mom died, it was very painful because we were so close. I went to a support group at Doylestown Hospital, and it was for adult children who lost a parent. And that group was phenomenal because it was people that were experiencing the same loss that I was. And by the end of the year, I was on the other side, and I was like, I'm good. I'm good. I've worked
Mhm.
through this. And some other members of my family who didn't do that, they started crashing and burning year two or year three. So we all do things differently.
Yeah.
And a lot of it depends on our habits and whether we push things off or face them head on.
Wow, that's great. And we're coming close to the end of our time, so I want to make sure we have time to talk about one of my favorite things,
The
which is
Eagles?
the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
Uh,
Go
at the time,
Birds. I
and
should have brought
I realized I've heard you say
Speaking of,
go birds and stuff, but I realized when you grew up in North Jersey, and then I heard you talking to David Tyree. I'm like, are you a Giants fan? Are you an Eagles?
I am glad you asked. I was a Giants fan all my life. I was a Yankees fan all my life, and it was 2016. The year that Carson Wentz came in. Was that
Yeah, that was
16?
16.
It was 16. I worked for them that year. So I'll put it out there for everybody. I did training for the rookies at the New York Giants for 9 years and absolutely love them. And that's how David Tyree and I became good friends because he was not there initially. There was somebody else in that position, but then I was working with him for 4 or 5 years as he was head of player development. And he is just one of the most remarkable guys. I mean, we get on the phone now, we can talk easily for an hour. He's just filled with wisdom and insight. He's amazing. And then I worked for the Eagles 1 year. And what happens in this business is new team owners come in, or the person who is your contact comes in. So I was working with a guy, Quentin Michael, who actually played with the Eagles.
Sure. Yeah.
And Quentin and I developed an amazing collaborative relationship that year. And I'm like, yes, I'm in with the Eagles now. And he has 5 kids, and he left at the end of his first year because he said, this is just too much. I need to spend more time with his family. And the new person came in, and I can't even get that person on the phone. So, but that was the year that Carson Wentz came in. And Quentin actually had me not just come in and do my program, but be with them for 2 full days. So I got to know that
Wow.
rookie class well. I sat across from Carson at dinner, got to know these guys very well, and they're very different personalities and different life experiences. So it's always interesting to see that.
I didn't
And
know that about Carson. He was my 2017 Carson Wentz is my favorite football player of all time. I was in love with Carson Wentz that year. I didn't buy a lot of paraphernalia, but I bought a Carson Wentz like t-shirt jersey. I was all in on Wentz, and it was just sad with the injuries, kind of how he. So,
I know, and he was, and that's the year I became a fan. And sorry, Giants, but I kind of switched sides. Even though I got a lot of abuse from all these Eagles fans years before, because I'd be the only one in the room
you
going,
got to stay loyal to your
Giants,
team.
and they'd be like, Elaine, we hate you. And so, but I fell in love with the Eagles that year because it was delightful to watch Carson play. And then, he had his injury, and Saint Nick came in and just took it
It was
to
a
this.
magical year as a Philly
It
fan.
was phenomenal. And even Jason Kelsey, I want to get in touch with him because when I found out that he was at University of Cincinnati, I looked up his picture and what he looked like because I've worked with their athletes a number of times. And then I pulled up my pictures, and I think it was 2008 when I was there. Who's standing behind me on stage, engaged in one of the role-playing exercises?
Oh,
You see,
really?
it's Jason. So I want to get in touch with him. I've been trying, and I'm going to work on this after football season is over and say, Jason, you remember me? So it was very cool.
So speaking
Um,
of, and when football season's over, we are recording this 5 days before the Super Bowl, where the Eagles will be playing the Chiefs. Um, and as I said, Carson Wentz, 2017 was my favorite player, potentially
Saquon.
potentially being supplanted soon, because Saquon Barkley is just he's an amazing player. He's having an amazing season, MVP caliber season, and everything. And the best part is every interview this guy does, you just love him more because he says all the right things. He just seems like the best guy. And then lo and behold, I'm on like LinkedIn, and you make this post, just like hanging out with Saquon, or how you like he was in one of your sessions and you got to know him. So I definitely wanted, especially because we're right in the middle of the Super Bowl with the Eagles. I just share with me a little of your experience about Saquon Barkley.
My last year with the Giants, I guess it was 2019 or was it 18, but it was before COVID. And Saquon was in that rookie class. And the cool thing about that day with Saquon is usually when I'm going to work with an NFL team, I will look at that rookie class because that's who I work with, and I will see who they are, where they came from. I didn't have time that week to do it because we were apartment sitting in New York, so we were busy doing the New York thing. And so I didn't know who he was. And I think that was good because it made me relate to him in a genuine way. And so not be starstruck or, this is the guy in the number 2 draft that season or whatever. He sat front and center. I'm always impressed with the people that come down to the first row. And Saquon sat front and center. He was so open. He was so friendly. He was just And I'll be honest, sometimes when I work with some of the teams, some people have chips on their shoulders when they're coming in, and then others are just genuine, and you just see who their hearts and who they are. Saquon asked absolutely more questions than any other rookie that I've ever worked with. He just fired one after another. And to me, that shows a very intelligent, curious person.
And
He
just
was
sorry, just for context, the because we touched upon a little bit, but when you're saying he was asking questions and you were doing a program for rookies around like how to make smart choices when it comes to
Yeah,
alcohol.
the topics that I would normally cover with the rookies is high risk drinking, sexual assault, and sexual health. And when somebody is coming into working or playing on a professional team, they're more vulnerable. And a lot of times these young men can be entrapped by people. Young women come in and they want to sleep with them, they want to get pregnant, they want to do this, they're cha-ching, they want to ride on the coattails of their success. And I warn them about that. In fact, I've had NBA players going, I never thought about it until you told me. And then I ran my tape backwards and go, oh, so that's what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to get them to understand that you're in a much brighter spotlight than you were even on a collegiate level. And you represent your city, you represent your team, you're a role model for little kids, and choices that you make do not go under the radar. And so trying to get them to make positive choices and be out there in the media for the right things and not the
Yeah.
wrong things. So Saquon was amazing. So that's what that program was about that day. And it was so sweet because he um made it a point to stand next to me for the picture because I always have a group picture, and he wanted to stand next to me. And we talked a lot about his Lehigh Valley roots, and he was excited that Jeff and I were living here in Doylestown in Bucks County. And it was just such a positive experience. And I see who he is today, and he's exactly the same person he was that year coming in.
Yeah,
And
it's like
it's just,
every like interview he has, every like mic'd up moment where they cut to something he said. It's like he's like the ultimate yes and teammate and collaborator. Like I don't know if you saw this earlier in the year when um he was close to breaking his personal all time single game rushing, and he's like on the sideline, and the coach is like, "Look, we're winning by a lot. I'm gonna pull all the starters, but you're like 20 yards away from getting your personal record. I want you to get it if you want it." And Saquon's like, "No, I'd rather see the young guys eat." And it was just like
yeah.
you just
Or
had a
or
personal record.
in another interview, he said, I'd rather go to the Super Bowl than break this record. Or what I liked is when he broke another record or did another thing, it was late in the season, and he basically said, I could not have done this without this team. And he didn't even put it on him. He
Yes.
put it on everybody else.
Well, there was a sideline of that when he broke whatever the Eagles single game record, like 200. I think it's the Rams. He hit like 250 yards. And there's a thing of him walking up and down with the offensive lineman saying, "We did it." Like he didn't say, "I did it." Or he wasn't even like, "Thank you for helping me." He was like, "We did it." And it's just that mindset that, like, to me, it's a yes and mindset is very like positive, like putting it out there, supporting others. And it's so inspiring that, to see someone do it. And it's just so, um, it's like makes me grateful that sometimes this whole thing about don't meet. I think that's what your LinkedIn post was, right? It was like people say don't meet your idols or don't meet your heroes, um, but when you met him, like oh, you meet him as your hero, you're like oh wow, you are just as genuine and good.
Well, and I think that this is largely the underlying success of this team because, from what I understand, he's the one in the locker room that's really motivating people. And when you have somebody that is that good and that successful, and he's not putting it on him and his ego, but he's putting it on everybody, that's elevating all of them, and that's motivating them. If he was being self-centered and a jerk, the other guys would be like, well, they would ruin their motivation, but I think he has just pumped everybody up on that team. That's the kind of person he is.
And let's kind of start towards wrapping up by tying this all back then, right? I mean, obviously, makes millions of dollars going to the Super Bowl, chance to make history. But the lesson there, right, is like he is the star, quote unquote, and he's still asking questions in a training. He's still saying we did it, not I did it. He's still saying no, let's give. And how many times do we see in the work world, the corporate world, where a manager or boss is insecure, or not thinking, and so they just take the credit themselves or berate other people. And it's like, and that kind of comes to wellness too, right? Because mental health, like if you're in an environment where you feel supported, psychologically safe, which is something I talk about a lot, you perform better. But if you've got a leader who's like an anti Saquon, who's like um not being that supportive, it can have a dramatically negative effect.
You spend more time looking over your back and waiting for something to drop that's not comfortable, and you can't focus on your work. You can't focus. You lose your motivation. You don't even want to perform well. I mean, when I was out there, not as a self-employed person, when I would go into work someplace, first question I would ask people is, how long have you been here? And if you hear years and years, then you know that they're good people to work with. If you keep hearing 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, don't, that's not the place to be. So if you treat people well, they're going to treat you well, they're going to be loyal, they're going to perform well for you, and your organization is going to benefit from that. It increases your culture, it increases your reputation, and ultimately it increases your profits.
Yeah, it's a simple rule. Just be like Saquon, and
Be kind.
your
Yeah,
company and team will thrive.
be kind. Be kind to people. I love people. Be kind to people. And I think the thing is that sometimes we get judgmental. I will spend as much time talking to the woman that's cleaning the bathroom as I will talking to a CEO of a
Mhm.
company. Because that woman in that bathroom has a story that we can all learn from. And that's what we need to do is just learn to talk to people, even just being kind and saying, are you having a good day? How are you today? And if you're upset and things don't go well, like, something goes wrong, you're checking in your motel or people, and I'll just say, it's okay. It's a good day. Nobody died today. Just keep things in perspective.
Yeah, it is. And we can talk about we can get a whole new tangent
Oh
about
no,
that.
it could go on for hours.
But yeah, it's just remember everyone's a person, and it's not only helps them, it helps you too by because it keeps your emotions in check and gives you a positive outlook. Elaine, this has been great. I'm going to finish up
Thank
with
you, Avish.
one final question. Before I get to that, though, we've already alluded to the work you do, whether it's an association or a company that wants to bring a wellness program in, or program on resilience, or if there happens to be a sports team listening or a university, I want to bring Elaine into a program on risky behavior, sexual assault, alcoholism. How should people find you and contact you?
You can get me on my website, www.elaine, Elaine, and then Pasqua, P as in Peter, A, S as in Sam, QUA.com. So www.elainepasqua.com.
Fantastic. Yeah, check out the website. A lot of great info. And you got video on there as well, right? People can see you.
I do. I'm working on getting new video. You know how it
Okay.
is. But there's a
Yeah, always new video.
I have a YouTube channel, so you can just go to Elaine Pasqua on YouTube and find me
Okay.
there. I'm also on LinkedIn too. So
Great. So in the show notes, I'll link to all three of those. I'll link to your website, to your
thanks.
LinkedIn, and to your YouTube channel. People can check out Elaine. So Elaine, kind of as a final thought, and I didn't prep you with this question in advance. I One of the things I talk about is I honestly believe the world would be a better place if everyone just started with a default mindset of yes and instead of yes but. We just change our default. Our first thought, instead of being yeah but, was to at least explore yes and. The world would be a better place. So from your perspective, what is one small thing that you believe if everyone did, it would make the world a better place?
Be kind. Be kind. That's my first one for everybody. And then yes, and I just want to bring it in one other place. Believe in yourself and go further than you think you are. Because if you ever thought, if Elaine Pasqua, who grew up on Gertrude Street in Clark, New Jersey, ever thought that she was going to be standing in the NFL headquarters, looking down on Park Avenue, going, I can't believe I'm here. You know, go for your dreams because you never know where it's going to get you. Don't be afraid to hear no, because you have a 50-50 chance of hearing yes. And if you hear no, brush yourself off, dust yourself off, whatever, and push on for the next thing because there's always good things ahead.
I love it. Be kind, believe in yourself. Amazing. Well, that's a great way to end. Elaine, thank you so much. This was a fantastic chatting with you, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Thank you, Avish. I would love to. It's a pleasure, as always. Thank you.